Creativo hace parte de la iniciativa Cerebro y Aprendizajes, un coloquio anual organizado
Welcome
por
to the Creative Brain, a colloquium organized by Hacienda Los Alcaparros School since 2017. We will be beginning our conference, Eco-Innovation is a Road for Sustainable Development.
Esta conferencia marca el fin del Cerebro Creativo y el cierre de la reunión anual de GRULAC Jr. Antes de empezar, les recomendamos...
Before we start, we have some directions in order for you to have your best experience. In order to make use of interpretation, simultaneous interpretation, locate the interpretation button in the lower bar in the Zoom window and click the icon. Select the language you want to listen to. Select off if you want to listen to the original language. Should you have any problem with the tool, you may text in the chat box and we will assist you. The questions done through the chat box will be less likely to be addressed. So please locate the Q&A button, questions and answers, in the lower part of the Zoom window and write your question. We will do everything possible to answer the greatest number of questions. Thank you very much for joining us.
Bienvenidos a nuestra sexta.
Welcome to our sixth encounter regarding the creative brain and the global call for creative ideas. Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati and Dr. Olaf Kal, welcome. And to all of our sponsors from Mongolia and other institutions, welcome to the sixth session of the Creative Brain. Welcome all delegations of schools, parents of Hacienda Los Alcaparros School, and all the students that have been part of this GRULAC Jr session. Welcome to all the community of Hacienda Los Alcaparros School. It's admirable to see that during this semester, we have had around 6 meetings around brain and learning. And today we are completing our 5th colloquium on this topic, which in this case becomes really important, not only because the last talk. It's the last talk of this series, but also because it connects the creative brain with the GRULAC Jr. initiative. The GRULAC Jr. is the group of youngsters representing Latin America and the Caribbean, focusing permanently on biodiversity and the environment and related matters. Youngsters who are part of GRULAC have the key objective of addressing topics that they addressed in school at the United Nations work tables, focusing on the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. And throughout all this week, they have had the opportunity of finding the audience or having Dr. Olaf Kulke, who will be joining us shortly, who has been working directly with students and more, showing them the Our People, Our Climate project, through which students learn how to recognize the footprint left by climate change in the highlands, in this case, in the Moor of Chingasa. So these students now have a new vision of nature, a new way of relating to nature, learning how it defends itself from climate change and all the hardships related to it. And they become explorers of those footprints and of the huge challenge humanity faces regarding climate change. Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati, it's a great honor to have him here with us today. He is the chief of the biodiversity programs of the land law and governance programs at the United Nations Environment Program. He is a biotechnist, and he advises countries on conservation and development policy and serves as an advisor to international bodies. He also teaches, of course, at several universities and is working currently to understand how to influence in human behavior for the good of the environment. And I would like to close by saying that there's a key importance in school education in finding a new meaning and a relationship amongst children and youngsters with nature. Nature becomes our master, our teacher, in terms of adaptation processes, survival processes, creation processes, and conservations of ecology and systems that sometimes we disregard and forget to respect. We will learn from nature. We will learn new ways of facing climate change, and we will learn about new ways that will lead us to finding or recovering the sense of interdependence that human beings have with nature. So in general terms, in a beautiful manner, this is what Dr. Pisupati will be addressing his presentation about. So with no further ado, welcome Dr. Pisupati and Dr. Kolki, and we will begin the session with Dr. Balakrishna Pisupati's intervention. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Gracias, Professor Rosa Cecilia Caro, Ms. Sofia Magdalena Ramirez Soto. Thank you very much for the invitation. Buenos días. Espero que estés bien. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Before I start, I just would like to confirm that you're able to hear me clearly.
Excellent, thank you.
Brilliant.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now share my presentation, and I just sort of wanted to confirm that I have it in the presentation mode when we are starting. So you can see the presentation, I hope. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Good. So I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy and thrilled to be with you all here today. for people like me, we don't get much of opportunity to have this kind of an interaction with children, youth, and youngsters very often. Most of our time is spent talking to senior officials, negotiators, colleagues from the UN. So that way, it's a very refreshing time for me to be with you all here today. And let me start by congratulating all of you for being a part of this particular initiative. I was quite impressed when I heard the title of it in terms of calling for creative ideas. That's what the world needs today. We have too many problems. What we need are some very creative solutions, and who can better provide us some ideas for finding solutions than the youth themselves. What I would like to do in the next 25-30 minutes is to very quickly give you a glimpse of the world around us. I'm not going to focus so much on the problems. You already have heard many of them, and many of us live through those problems in terms of water scarcity, increasing pollution, climate change, loss of nature. Today, I just want to basically talk with you about how nature inspires us to find solutions to some of these problems. And my focus of the presentation would be on eco-innovations and how creative youngsters like yourselves can provide us with some ideas so that we can all pick up and run with this. As I was being introduced, I've been working on the issue of nature protection, biodiversity conservation, sustainable development for many years. And certainly nature inspires not me, but all of us. And what you see on the screen, I do not know how many of you can identify or even understand those pictures. All the three pictures that you see on the screen there are a group of plants called the orchids. And if you can see the shapes, the colors, and the brilliance of nature in providing us with such intriguing, such brilliant shapes, colors, and forms, I think it's a good beginning for us to get into this presentation by looking at some of those pictures. You know how nature is so very beautiful. I'm sure you have heard in your recent presentations a lot about development, sustainable development, development that is not happening the way we want. And for anyone working on sustainable development, whether it is at the local level or national level or global level, primarily countries have focused a lot on four capitals, four bases happened so far: the human capital, the social capital, the physical capital, and the financial capital. But to a large extent, we have never accounted for the natural capital. And today, globally, the focus is on how do we push the boundaries for this natural capital? How do we include natural capital as and when we are deciding on our development priorities, as and when we decide on our economic planning, as and when we decide on social structuring? So the natural capital has a large amount of opportunities to offer us. If you're taking biodiversity, I'm sure you know the meaning of biodiversity. It is the life on Earth, the life around us, whether they are microscopic organisms or microbes or plants or animals or species or the various life forms you see in the seas and oceans and mountains. That's biodiversity. That is life around us. And biodiversity is contributing enormously for economic development. It is being used enormously for innovations, and we're going to be hearing or listening to that in a minute. Biodiversity is important for local communities and indigenous people, for livelihoods. and biodiversity is our future. Almost 20 years ago, when the heads of state met in Johannesburg in South Africa for what at that time was called as the World Summit on Sustainable Development, they phrased a terminology which is quite important or useful for all of us to remember today, that biodiversity is the life insurance policy for life itself. It's the insurance for life. It's the insurance for future life. And how big is this diversity? What we have known so far that are described, that are named with names, the Latin names, you're familiar. We have known, discovered, and described about 1.7 to 2 million species. But as scientists, we know that there are up to 100 million species that are yet to be described. So what we know is just about 1 or 2% of the diversity around us. There is so much that is available that we do not even know about. What is the worth of this diversity? What is the worth of nature? I've just given you some figures there. 1 hectare of mangrove forests. Mangroves are the ecosystems that exist in the interfaces between rivers, lakes, seas, and the oceans, the estuaries as they are called. 1 hectare provides $6,250 per year. The trade in medicinal plants, many of you are familiar with using medicinal plants for your day-to-day requirements of health needs. It's $60 billion globally. 42% of the anti-cancer drugs are from natural sources. The coastal capture fisheries that we're talking about provides us more than $35,000 million worth of economy annually. And the forests provide close to 60 million work years, 80% of it in developing countries. So nature is not just about beauty. Nature also is about economics. So conserving, protecting, learning from nature makes a brilliant economic sense as well. And that's where in the early years, when people started looking at nature to get inspired from nature, I'm sure you have heard of this inventor, artist, to an extent a philosophist also, Leonardo da Vinci. When he had this beautiful quotation where he says that nature in her inventions leaves nothing that is wanting and nothing that is superfluous, nothing that is incomplete. So nature is complete, and nature has evolved over millions of years. So what is that we learn from nature? Why is that we are talking about it today? I just provided you those 6 pictures that you can see on the screen. The first one on the left, the Velcro. I'm sure every one of us use Velcro in one form or another in our day-to-day life. The one in the middle on the top is a building in an African city called Harare in country Zimbabwe, which is called the Eastgate Center. And I'll mention why I'm showing you some of these pictures in a minute. The third picture are a series of trains in Japan, what are called as the bullet trains or Shinkansen, as they call it in Japan. The one on the bottom is a high-rise suspension bridge. The one in the middle at the bottom is a sonar map. And the last one on the bottom right-hand side is a windmill. And you may be surprised, why is that I'm showing you these pictures? And this is why I'm showing you those pictures. Velcro, when it was invented, the inspiration for invention of Velcro came from understanding how seeds get stuck. Certain plant species seeds get stuck to our bodies, to our clothing, to animals. And they get carried away. And at a particular point of time, they can be removed from the clothing, from the animal's skin, or from the people who walk near them quite easily. So when scientists basically were looking at how these seeds get stuck to these skins and the clothing and get dispersed, they realized that they have a very interesting architecture based on which they are able to get stuck to these surfaces that are very strong, and it requires some effort to remove them. So when scientists started looking at an inspiration, got inspired by the seed, they actually invented Velcro. So what we use as Velcro, the knowledge for designing Velcro came from a very simple seed that we all call as beads. The picture in the middle that you see is what is called as a termite mound. In deserts, if you go, you have these very tiny insects. These insects are very fragile. And you know, in deserts, the temperatures are very, very harsh. It's very hot climates in temperature in deserts. But scientists got very, very surprised on how these very tiny insects that do not have a big protective layer around them, they don't have thick skins or anything, are able to survive such heat, such harsh conditions of climate. And they actually started understanding the way these termite mounds that are on the top center of this particular picture were constructed. And when they had a structural engineer who went and looked at the cross section of this particular termite mound, he was so surprised to see that the termites have constructed this mound using air vents, circulation points. The design of these air vents made by the termites are so brilliant that the air that enters these mounds makes the inside of the mound cooler by 5 to 7 degrees centigrade. So if the temperature outside is 50, it's about 43 or 45 degrees inside the mound. And people got very inspired in the way these air vents were made by the termites. And this technology was what was used in this picture on top to construct the first eco-friendly building that avoided using air conditioning and heating, where they used the air vents of this building in Harare in Zimbabwe, exactly using the architecture of the termite mound. Another inspiration from nature. And you know, for those of you who are familiar with physics, you know, when objects or articles travel, one of the biggest things they face is what is called the drag, the resistance of the wind. So when designers were working on constructing the bullet trains, they actually got inspired by the kingfisher in terms of its beak, in terms of its body when it flies and dives into rivers to take the fish, to catch the fish. And that design of the body and the beak actually was what that inspired the bullet trains. Many of you have seen the spider webs that you see on the bottom left side of the picture. And I do not know how many of you recognize that the silk that the spiders make, the web the silk is made of, is one of the strongest products nature have ever produced. And today, this material from spider webs is what is used to make bulletproof vests. And this material is what is used to construct these kinds of structural designs, both in terms of architecture as well as the material. Many of you have seen these bats. Bats become unfortunately very, very popular in the recent days because of the COVID. And many of you may or may not recognize that a lot of the scanning that we do, sound-based scanning, whether it is in health applications or in aviation industry or in ocean sciences, the sonar, which is what you see in the bottom center of the thing, has been inspired by how bats are able to fly so fast without hitting any obstacle any time in their lifetimes. And the last one you see is a kind of an inspiration of a squid that lives in the ocean, deep oceans, that had really inspired people to look at how some of the resistance to wind turbines can be reduced by mimicking nature. So these are just some quick examples of what is called biomimicry, mimicking nature. And what I've given you is just maybe a 0.01% of what nature has to offer. And very fortunately, remember, biomimicry, or what we can learn from nature, is based on not just 10 years of research and development, 50 years of research and development. It's based on 3.8 billion years of existence of nature. So it's 3.8 billions of research and development. That what we are seeing around us is what we see as perfect nature. And that is why today a lot of people are focusing on getting inspired by nature, learning from nature, where those 4 aspects are being used in many, many areas, including in businesses, to be inspired, supported by nature, mimicking nature, copying nature, biomimetics. How do we actually understand nature in terms of structural elements of it? Inspired by nature, bio-inspiration. And today in climate change, in biodiversity, and dealing with a lot of environmental problems, we often hear this word nature-based solutions. So certainly we actually have started looking at some of these issues of being inspired by nature in terms of the form, in terms of the structure, in terms of the process, and I'll give you 1 or 2 examples of each of it. And thirdly, in terms of the systems. And some of you will be surprised on how much nature provides us to deal with management sciences. I'm not talking about a wind turbine construction or constructing a termite mound and a building, but nature is providing answers to a lot of management problems as well. And I'll provide you 1 or 2 examples. Not sure how many of you can recognize the animal, certainly an extremely common animal for Africa, where I live now, in hippopotamus or hippo. And today, the research based on the sweat of hippo inspires development of a product that is a waterproof sun lotion that is antiseptic, insect repelling, and antifungal properties. And how many of us can believe that hippopotamus can be a source of inspiration for $1 million industry out there? This is an interesting plant called Coquia coquae, which is quite prevalent in your part of the world. And it grows in very, very thick jungles, where it receives very little sunlight, maybe 1 or 2 days a year. But scientists were very surprised to see with 1 or 2 days of sunlight, how this particular plant is able to survive and produce the photosynthesize. So a result of that interest led people to start working on the most efficient solar cells that could capture sunlight and keep it for many, many weeks and many, many months. So that's an inspiration from nature. Lungs, the air we breathe, very important organ for our body, is inspiring scientists, designers, and biomedical engineers in terms of developing fuel cells that can certainly mimic the way lungs function in terms of looking at innovative biomedical applications. Namibian beetle. Namibia is a very dry desert. It's one of the driest parts of the world in Africa, in southern Africa. And scientists were very surprised to find this beetle is able to actually capture water from the air and store it on its skin by using very, very special design of its skin or its shell, the outer shell. Inspired by this, people have already developed what is called as rainwater harvesting, or just water harvesting system, where today we are able to harvest water from the moisture that is available in the air directly. And in India today, these kinds of water harvesting systems are being installed in schools and colleges and universities, where people are able to capture water from thin air with no investment, except for that inspiration from the Namibian beetle. So nature is inspiring us in so many ways. And today, the expectation is by 2030, 8 years from now, this particular area of biomimicry can account for close to $425 billion of US GDP and $1.6 trillion of global total output. So that's what nature is worth. And a lot of this is being used in many, many different aspects of science. They're using in material sciences. using in engineering, using in environmental management. You're all familiar with it. But what is interesting is it's also being used in social sciences. If you have a moment, go and do a Google search on what is called the Bucket Brigade. Bucket Brigade is a very interesting institutional human resource management idea that is being used in corporates, where the inspiration of working both upstream and downstream in terms of decision making and in terms of logistics and all that, self-organization in bigger institutions, actually the inspirations are coming from ants and bees. And how many of us could imagine that an ant can inspire a major social management experiment globally that is successfully being run? So the eco-innovation applications, imagination is our problem. The solutions are all there. It is the questions that we still go and need to find out. So who are working on these eco-innovations? Who are working on these issues getting inspired? Scientists and researchers in transdisciplinary teams. Designers are working in it, in translating research results into products. We have children and youth who are finding local solutions. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how brilliant some of these nature-inspired solutions are coming from school children. And they are winning major awards and prizes for the innovations they are making. And it is also being picked up by a lot of policymakers who make things happen at different levels to make use of these experiences. And today the research is so sophisticated in learning from nature that we have a very new and an innovative area of biotechnology that is called synthetic biology. And today synthetic biology is helping biomaterial design that is supported by nature. So where did we evolve? Where did we learn? How long did it take for us to reach where we are? As I said, that more than 3.8 billion years of perfectionism by nature. The last 10, 15 years, we have been trying to learn, mimic, and get inspired by nature. We are looking at the future that could basically provide us a lot of economic gains by learning from nature. And the last bit of it is what is called as the biological intelligence. I don't know how many of you are aware, there was a very recent interesting report that was said where the animals in the oceans, especially dolphins and whales, they are able to actually have a language for themselves where the scientists are able to decipher 50 different words that these animals use in communicating. So we actually are now transitioning from artificial intelligence to biological intelligence into the future. And that's where, I really like that quote that is on the top of that particular slide that says that there will be a biologist in every design table. So that's what it is. And there are many of these kinds of innovations that are forthcoming. We're going to get a cement replacement. Cement is a major polluter, both in terms of energy as well as the other aspects of it. We'll have jet propulsion systems that are inspired by jellyfish. We'll have the next generation of the light emitting diodes, the LEDs, that are designed from firefly. Fireflies, they actually reflect light in dark. The joints that are modeled after the necks of ants that do not wear, that do not break, and they can take extreme stresses. High capacity lithium batteries that are based in terms of a packaging design inspired by the way this fruit called the pomegranate, which I'm sure many of you would have seen it. The pomegranate seeds are inspiring the way we are packing the lithium seeds batteries. And who are getting inspired by these? Not just scientists and policymakers and high technology people who are investing, but nature is inspiring school children. And I just wanted to give you this example because a lot of you also belong to this group. And what you see on the screen are 4 examples of major global awards, some of the ideas that nature had inspired these young children to come up with. Children had worked in Hawaii to develop a sun tile that is based on the way the honeybees construct their honeycomb. We had students who actually was able to capture the black carbon inspired by bees. We had students who actually came up with a current cleanser system, learning from the fishes and the ocean dynamic. And we had children who actually were able to produce a brilliantly, adapted bay protector against pollution in the coastal areas inspired by nature. So today, nature is just not inspiring high level technologists and scientists, but nature is being picked up, is being explored, and is inspiring a lot of children on the ground. And today, artificial intelligence, which I've told that you all have had a chance to think about, to listen to expert or people working on artificial intelligence, and the biological intelligence is contributing to a number of issues related to environment, climate change, biodiversity, healthy oceans, water security, clean air, weather and disaster resistance. So nature is inspiring us, from research and development to getting money, to grants for doing research, getting patents, doing collaborations. But lastly, and most importantly, it is also one way that is bringing together citizens from various walks of life together. As I said, that no more nature is only related to ecologists and biologists or botanists and zoologists. Today, nature-based science, nature-based applications are of interest for a number of citizen groups. So that's my last slide, where I just certainly would like you to go out and explore the world. It's beautiful and it is more diverse than we think. And I'm sure what we have known, what we have understood so far globally is only a small percentage of more things that nature can offer us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pisupati. I am out of words. You just, usted acaba de diseñar para nosotros.
You have just designed for us a whole new approach for the science curriculum and the education of children in this biological intelligence that the future needs. You have just inspired all of the projects that are being done by the smaller student, the children and the younger students and the youngsters, for them to develop their capacity. Thank you so much for such an inspiring talk. Now I will give the floor to Dr. Olaf Kulke, who has just joined us. And I am very honored to introduce two students from the Alcaparra School, Alejandra Valenzuela and Nicolas Gomez, who will be presenting the conclusions they had from the GRULAC meeting that took place last week. Afterwards, Dr. Pisupati and Dr. Kulke will be commenting on the proposals that the students who attended the GRULAC session will be presenting. Alejandra Valenzuela, you're welcome. And Nicolas, welcome. I am really, I feel real proud to be able to introduce you and to hear from your presentations. Thank you very much, Rosita. We are very happy to
have the opportunity to talk to you today. We are young people worried about our environment, and we are deeply thankful for you to give us a chance to take some action. It is also important that we tell you that we are about to read out a summary of our proposals and that we will be sending you a formal document with all of the information we have. Next, Nicolas Gomez, my co-president, is going to tell us about the committees that met in the GRULAC Summit.
Okay, so well, first, good morning. I had already said it. My name is Nicolas Gomez, and I'm going to present you the different committees that were like going on the 9th edition of GRULAC Jr. So first, we have rivers, oceans, and coasts. This committee was based on the use of our water resources and the different crises we may face in the future if we don't take action over them. We also have sustainable cities, which was based on the capital cities of Latin America and how they can get better and how they can like how they can change so it is not seen as a third world country anymore. Next, we have responsible production and consumption, which was based on the different resources that Latin America produces every day and how they can be exploited or used correctly in terms of economy, of capitalism, and of our economical system. Next, we have biodiversity at risk, which was kind of linked with what Mr. Balakrishna already presented, and it is about different species of our world, of our continent, how they are at risk of extinction, and what solutions can be presented from our point of view to delay this crisis. We have gender, a new development project that connected the gender equality issues of the world and of Latin America with the different ecological problems that we see every day. We finally had Jaguars and Crisis. Jaguars is a version of GRULAC Jr. It's a committee for the smaller ones that are learning about the different methods or issues that our planet fights every day, and that are interested in making a change. And finally, we have a new commission that was introduced this year, that is Crisis, Measurable Situations of Environmental Impact, that treated different problems of our continent, and that tried to be a little bit more specific with how to solve the situations quickly and immediately. So this is the committees of GRULAC Jr. Now, Alejandro is going to give us a few words. Thank you.
Queremos empezar la declaración agradeciéndole a los colegios que nos acompañaron. Nos
We
acompañaron
want to start the declaration by thanking the countries and the students in the schools that joined us. We want to thank Mexico, Argentina, Costa Rica, Peru, and different countries or different cities of Colombia. We have forwarded a declaration that's very important for us after a week of discussion and proposals that have been reviewed and drafted by Nicolas and myself. So Nicolas will start by addressing the
Al final haremos
Crisis
un breve
Committee,
resumen de las propuestas
and
en
we will
general.
continue to read a summary of other proposals.
Ok, muchísimas gracias, Alejandra. Entonces
Thank
voy
you very
a
much,
arreglar
Alejandra. So
la
I will
presentación.
share my screen.
Un segundo, por favor.
1 second, please.
Listo, entonces, pues como ya dijo Alejandra,
So as Alejandra has
todas
mentioned,
las comisiones trabajando en
we have
distintas soluciones, estuvimos
worked in different
buscando
solutions.
diferentes
We
propuestas
found different
para
proposals,
solucionar esto, no desde un punto de
in order to
vista
solve this, not from the
de los
standpoint
jóvenes,
of
no desde un punto de vista
youngsters
político,
only,
sino desde el punto de vista de los
or
jóvenes,
a political standpoint, but
que
from
es
our
básicamente el
standpoint, though,
corazón de lo que es GRULAC
which
Jr.
is basically the heart of what
Entonces, vamos a
GRULAC
comenzar.
Jr. portrays. So let's begin.
Listo, entonces con crisis
In terms of
el comité de
crisis,
crisis, como
in the
ya
crisis
dije en la
committee,
exposición,
as I mentioned
es una comisión que
before,
intenta
it is a
explicar el
commission
cambio
that
inminente que se puede
attempts to
hacer, el
explain the
cambio urgente
change,
que necesitan
the urgent change
nuestros ecosistemas
that
y
our
vainas.
ecosystems
Y en el
require.
comité de crisis se debatió
And in the
básicamente
crisis
de
committee,
si debería ser el fracking
it was
legal o cómo se
debated
debería
whether
regular.
fracking should
El
be
comité
legal or how should it be
de crisis
regulated.
propone
The
controlar
crisis
las
committee
inversiones al fracking,
suggests
continuar y aumentar
to
políticas de
control
impuestos,
investments in fracking,
incrementar los impuestos a
control
empresas petroleras
taxes
y plantea
around it, and
diferentes
it
soluciones
states
a estas
different
relaciones con el fracking,
solutions
¿cierto?
in terms of the
También
relationship with
rechazan la reforma
fracking. They also
energética de
reject
México,
the Mexico's
que es un
energy
documento bastante
reform,
extenso,
which is
que se
a
trató en
long
comisión,
document addressed at the
ya
Commission,
que la implementación de esta
since
reforma
the
significaría
implementation of this
retornar
reform would
aproximadamente
mean
60 años,
returning
ya que no
around
es
60
posible
years,
resolver
going
los
back
problemas
60 years
actuales.
because it's not possible
Después
to
continuaron
solve
con la
current problems.
declaración
Then
en la que fomentan
there was a
educación,
declaration
el uso de
fostering
evitar el uso de energías
education,
convencionales
avoiding the
y
use of
arreglar un
conventional
poco la
energy,
situación
and
de la contaminación
addressing
con
the issue of pollution or
con las
contamination
energías no renovables.
with non-renewable energies.
Y esto fue crisis.
Okay, now about our gender committee. There was a debate around the use of female sanitary products, and they considered the implementation of campaigns that enable for bio-friendly female
se enfocó en esa área.
products in the Amazon and other areas. Also, it encourages the use of input and supplies in the region and that are made of plantain fibers and ecological components. There's also a call for certain institutions and around this sanitary female products. But starting with the pre-implementation followed by the construction of the adequate infrastructure and entrepreneurship based on the boosting the economy of the region. Also to guarantee means of participation for women, and also to foster research and inspection projects in the Amazon. So in such a way, the women are informed about their bodies and are committed to helping the environment. So they it was declared that it's necessary to guarantee participate or engagement of women and information around this type of products. Also to raise awareness about the potential issues of non-biodegradable female products and the depletion of
Muchas
the
gracias,
environment.
Alejandra. Entonces continuamos con la declaración de biodiversidad
consequence.
en riesgo.
Nicolás.
Listo.
Thank you, Alejandra.
Comité de biodiversidad en riesgo. Entonces el comité se reunió y sacó las siguientes exigencias.
Diversity at risk.
Exigimos reuniones de
This
líderes
was
de
the
los
committee.
estados latinoamericanos para buscar la
So there were
formulación de una unión entre estos que
to
combata la
find the
biodiversidad en riesgo.
formulation
Exigimos que los
of
gobiernos
policies
designen
to
parte del
combat
presupuesto para impulsar la
biodiversity at
implementación de un
risk.
sistema ganadero
So part of the budget
silvopastoril
will
por
be
parte de la industria ganadera. Este sistema
targeted
consiste en la inclusión de
at
diversos
the
árboles y
cattle growing
arbustos para
industry
reforestar el territorio,
through the use
mantenerlo
of
rico en biodiversidad y
trees
expandir
and
la dieta del
reforestation
ganado.
to enrich
Exigen
the
también que los gobiernos
biodiversity
determinen un
and
porcentaje
the
territorial
feeding of
mínimo
cattle.
de terreno ganadero, tomando en cuenta factores
So
de posesión de
several
tierra
factors
y
should be
niveles de
taken
producción.
into account in terms of levels
Exigimos la
of production
participación de
and use
entidades
of land.
investigativas hacia las particularidades de
There were
cada
creative
terreno para
ideas around the
determinar las formas de
peculiarities of each
preservar
plot
la
of land in order
biodiversidad.
to find ways of preserving
Exigimos al sistema
biodiversity.
judicial estricta aplicación
Of
de
the
las
judicial
normas ya
system
establecidas con
is demanded
relación
to
a la
have a
caza
strict
ilegal y el
application of
tráfico de
standards
animales. Exigimos
regarding
el apoyo de
illegal
organizaciones no
hunting
gubernamentales
and
para el
trafficking
estudio,
of
la
animals.
preservación y liberación de la fauna en riesgo.
Also, the supportive
Exigimos la búsqueda
organization,
de
non-government
tecnologías de
organization
vigilancia
for the
similar al
study,
proyecto que se
preservation,
lleva a
and
cabo entre la ONG
liberation of fauna
Amazon y
at risk.
Microsoft para monitorear
Also, the seek of
movimientos en la selva
technologies,
amazónica.
similar to what
Exigimos el apoyo de las
ONG,
instituciones
Amazon, and
educativas
Microsoft
a
did
la
to
hora del
monitor
desarrollo de la
movements of the
campaña
Amazon
educativa
jungle.
sobre el tráfico de animales endémicos del Amazonas.
Also, an education
Exigimos
campaign
el apoyo de
on traffic of
organizaciones como es
animals,
la
endemic animals of the
IWGIA,
Amazon.
the
So we
International
demand
Work Group
the
for Indigenous
International Group
Affairs,
for
para
International
generar la
Affairs
inclusión de
to
comunidades
generate the
indígenas en el
inclusion of
proyecto del
indigenous
documental.
populations in the project of
Exigimos a
this
grupos de estudiantes
documentary.
interesados en el tema una participación
We
activa en la
demand
campaña.
an active
Exigimos la
participation in this
financiación y
campaign,
promoción
as
de
well as the
iniciativas
financing and
juveniles en
promotion of
instituciones
youth
educativas,
initiatives in educational
en
institutions
instituciones educativas en temas tales como la biodiversidad en
and
riesgo.
topics such as biodiversity at risk.
Exigimos el compromiso de
We
los delegados del
demand the
Comité de
commitment
Biodiversidad en Riesgo
of the
en GRULAC.
biodiversity members,
Actuaremos de manera
committee
que
members,
investigaremos
and we will act in a
periódicamente
way that we
con el fin de
research
mantenernos al tanto de
periodically
noticias
with the aim
relacionadas
of
con los
keeping
problemas
up with
discutidos.
news
De
related
esta
to the
manera poder
problems
actuar de
discussed.
forma
In this way,
pertinente
we
a
will
los
be
hechos.
able to act accordingly.
Publicaremos y daremos
We
visibilidad a
will
estos
publish
sucesos
and make
todo
visible all these
a través
events
de redes
through
sociales y
social
foros
media
de Internet.
and
Se
online
publicarán
forums.
ambas caras de la moneda,
Both
desde el crimen
sides of the
realizado
coin
hasta
will
las
be
acciones tomadas por las
published or
autoridades.
posted from the
Este
crime
fue el
committed
Comité de Biodiversidad
all
en
the way
Riesgo.
to actions taken by
Ahora
authorities.
Alejandra va a continuar con el
Now,
Comité
Alejandra
de
will be
Jaguares.
discussing or summarizing the Jaguares Committee. Jaguares is just an introduction to GRULAC Jr., so they drafted their own declaration, and I will be sharing it with you. In the Jaguares or Jaguar Committee, there were topics such as women, and many of them are head of household. So the importance of education was discussed in order for children to be able to learn about ecosystems and the environment. Governments are encouraged to take action and to collaborate through grants and donations, and also for countries to come together and fight against these issues. Jaguares is a very important committee for GRULAC Jr., and its action is key for this, for everything to work. Now we will close by mentioning as follows. We are youngsters from Latin America, and we care about the environment. We are very thankful for having all of you here, and as well as all the schools that attended GRULAC Jr. For those of you who supported us and gave us a space to freely express ourselves about problems that really concern us. Thank you, Rosita Caro, for giving us the space, and Andres Torres for organizing GRULAC. And I also want to thank Nicolas Gomez, my peer, for helping me in this process. Now we expect to have a conversation with you about our solutions or what we have suggested or proposed. Thank you very much, Alejandra and Nicolas. We are speechless for about your presentation and your formality. I encourage Mr. Pisupati and Gilki and Mr. Gilki to share with us your comments about these presentations and comments from our students and the Jaguars group.
Esto estamos preparando. Buenos días, Olaf.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, Olaf.
Would you like to
Well-
comment now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So thank you for your detailed presentation, first of all, and thank you for including me in the presentations. And I want to start at the end of the translated presentation that I have been given, and want to comment a little bit on the providing of psychopedagogical support for women and also providing security in climate shelters, and emphasize a little bit on the necessary resources that you are emphasizing here. My first comment that I wanted to give you is that I think this is a really valuable aspect of your proposal, and I would encourage you to think through this particular aspect in detail. What does the psychopedagogical support actually mean? How can that be carried out, and what kind of resources would be needed to provide such things, and to perhaps develop really detailed concrete plans as to how, for example, shelters or safe places could be created, or a network or an organization that supports shelters and safe places could be created to restore mental and physical health after a trauma. So What does that mean? The first thing that came to my mind was, what does that look like? You know, I think this is really, really valuable, but what does that look like, and what kind of network can you establish to make that happen across the continent, for example? What kind of initiatives can you develop to provide that? And you also emphasize that you can give talks to support mental health and let people know that they're not alone in their situation. I think this is another really, really important part. But with mental health, I would encourage you to also look at the same time at the economic support for women that might find themselves in this position, because often when we are in a mental health crisis, we also need the economic resources to support us. So when we are experiencing trauma, often that comes along with an economic crisis as well. To support women with economic means or economic resources to provide them on their, the resources for a journey towards better mental health. So this is my first comment.
Okay, so first of all, we would like to thank you, Olaf, for all your participation, for all what you have done for us in this last week, all the information you have shared with us, and all the knowledge you have been able to pass through to us. To answer to what you were saying, we as a group of young students need like economical support, and that's the base to solve the problem that you were talking about. So if I'm not wrong, you were talking about the mental health and the different trauma that can be generated from these situations. And now what we propose and what we want to see happening is an economical impact that can help those people. We as an independent group of young students, all we can do is have a voice, but we do need a support from the governments, from all the different entities that are involved in this different problems, and for people to actually be be helped, and for people actually to see an impact in their lives. We need support from all these entities, and we need our voices raised, and we need to be listened. So I think that could answer your question.
Thank you.
If I may come in at this point. Sure, thanks.
Yes.
Thank you. Quite elaborate, quite thoughtful presentations, both from Alejandra and Nicolas. Thank you very much. Looks like you've spent a lot of time thinking about putting some of these ideas together. And certainly the last point that we were discussing is something which is currently emerging as one of the most important elements of dealing with sustainable development, environmental management, all that which is related to behavioral change. How do we bring about environmental change, and how do we ensure that people understand their roles and responsibilities at different levels, at the household level, at the community level, at the local level, national and global. So certainly from that perspective, yes, I mean, I do sort of recognize the ideas or priorities that Nicolas just now mentioned in terms of the need for economic support. But certainly when we are looking at some of it, when we are looking at that psychopedagogical approaches, that includes looking at changing the behavior. It's always good to start small. It can be at your individual level, it can be at the household level, it's your peer group, it's your own network and your community kind of a thing, because to a large extent, some of these cascade into having larger impacts. But having said that, there are two dimensions to this issue. One dimension is how do you as an individual would like to influence the transformative change that needs to happen, which is more bottoms up. but you also need what we call as enabling environment, an environment that helps you to sustain some of those actions, to scale up some of those interventions, to strengthen some of those voices as well. And that is where today there is a lot of focus in different fora, working with youth, learning and hearing from youth, in terms of also having a tops-down approach to dealing with some of these issues. And that is why if you take it, for example, there is now an international negotiation going on amongst 196 countries who actually are defining the next 10 years of how biodiversity or nature should be protected, nature should be shared, and what kind of benefits people should accrue by using this nature. And today, this particular group, which traditionally are only the government focal points or ministries of foreign affairs who discuss some of these, are very seriously sitting and listening to the voices of the youth. So what is important for you is also not just look at the, what kind of work, what kind of ideas you generate, but it is also important you find appropriate channels to let these messages reach out to those who actually are making decisions as well. And that is why a platform like this could be quite useful. And from UN Environment Program, this is something which we have been doing for the last few years, specifically working on youth. As we are talking now, we have 16 youth shortlisted from Europe who actually are putting together a toolkit to be used by youth globally on bringing about pro-environmental behavioral change. What can happen at the household level, community level, and global level. So one suggestion I would have is, in as much as you would like to consolidate your ideas and voices, you also please find opportunities to share some of these ideas so that over a period of time, it can be a proper connection of the ideas coming from the local level, but also the facilitating policies coming from the global level as well. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Pisupati. Alejandro, Nicolás, ¿quieren comentar sobre las respuestas?
Thank you, Mr. Pisupati. Would Alejandra Nicolás like to comment on the answers?
For your very insightful comment. We are very grateful to have spaces like this where we are able to express our ideas and our concerns for the environment. We are forever grateful that we got this opportunity to talk to you and to Olaf. It is a golden opportunity for young people that care about the environment. And we will take this into account, all the comments you've made, and we will take action. And I am sure you will see us at some UN summit soon enough talking about environmental action. Thank you so much.
Nicolás.
I think it all has been said. We are going to take action, and I really just want to thank Mr. Pisupati for his presence here today. I think it's very valuable that we are actually getting listened by the different entities that help the environment in our world. And I just want to thank our guest for his presence here.
Bueno, yo quiero decir que uno de los objetivos o de las metas.
I wanted to mention that one of the objectives that the school has is the formation of global citizens. Now, when we talk about global citizens, we seek for students to be able to develop certain skills, adaptive skills, through
de las personas alrededor
in the
del mundo.
capacity of putting themselves in other people's shoes and address world issues and find different ways of having empathy and feeling towards what's going on in the world, and of course academic skills and competencies, as it has taken place in GRULAC, as far as learning about issues and becoming informed and shaping solutions towards the future. But third, and for me the most important and most difficult one to put into action, is basically taking action, creating the networks, the ways, the mechanisms to inform people about the conclusions drawn in, taking actions, even the smallest actions, or the younger students, or the young students. I think that Alejandra, Nicolás, and all of the students that have been part of this process have learned about the importance of this, or the importance this work has. And therefore, I congratulate them. There's someone I would like to mention as well, Professor
Primero
Andrés
el doctor Fernando Casas, que ha
Torres
sido la persona
and Fernando Casas, who has been the person who has inspired the school from the onset in these topics about Latin America and the Caribbean and the groups, the youth group. But he has been clear about the fact that it's a group of youngsters. Adults are just the facilitators or the sponsors to support the process, but the initiative belongs to young students that are part of the Latin America and the Caribbean group. And the person in charge of encouraging them, accompanying them, coaching them, and opening new roads has been Andrés Torres.
creo que es
That is not joining us today, but it's important to pay public homage to him because he has been recognized him for his work in this regard since several years ago. Thank you, Andres and Alejandra and Olaf. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have some questions from the audience. We have some questions. There is one for Mr. Pisupati. This, how is nanotechnology related to biomimicry?
Yes, thanks a lot. Thank you. I was
Can
just
you-
sort of wanting to answer that question and not miss that question. There is a lot that nature is providing answers to the research in nanotechnology, and I'll give you 2 examples. Today there is a lot of research that is going on in terms of developing products that are hydrophobic. Hydrophobic in the sense that doesn't get wet, that doesn't get impacted by water and wetness and all. And as you know, this is an extremely important material science-based research, whether it is related to ocean sciences or space sciences or any of them. And the answers to some of those questions are coming from a number of nature-based solutions for nanotechnology use. And there is a whole branch of research that is being followed up on what is called the Lotus Effect. Many of you would have heard of the flower lotus that actually grows in water, but it never gets affected by water. It has got very special, in very general terms, we call it as a wax coating, and because of the wax, the water doesn't stick onto it, and because of it, the flower doesn't rot, and it can grow. But then the research has shown that it is just not the wax, but it is also a lot of structural elements that is actually helping the lotus flowers, the lotus stem, the lotus leaves to basically deal with it. So there is a whole branch of research on understanding what is called as the Lotus Effect. That is based on the nanotechnology research and biomimicry. The second one is on what is called the iridescence, which is more in terms of how light gets reflected from plants, from animals, from butterflies, and from bees, and a number of these kinds of natural life forms. And many of you may not know, certainly many of these kinds of, including butterflies, when you see the colors on their wings or the beauty of the spots and all that, they are not actually colors, but they actually are reflections that are based on the positioning of different cells on the wings of these butterflies. So today, nanotechnology-based research into mimicking that color is being used by a number of research groups, including people who manufacture cars, where today you don't have to have a very uninteresting car, which is either white or black or blue or maroon or red, but you can have a car that can actually be inspired by your imagination, where the car basically can have a nano paint that mimics some of these kinds of structures, nanostructures that we find on the insect wings, on the butterfly wings, and the bee's wings, and things like that. So there is an enormous amount of applications that are happening in nanotechnology. And today, nanotechnology is also being used in a lot of cosmetic applications. There was this point that was made about gender and also the environmental impact and all those kinds of things. So today, cosmetics, nanotechnology, and biomimicry are intricately linked. And there is a lot that is going on in that area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pasupati. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pisupati.
Would like to comment a little bit about your experience this week working with the kids in the GRULAC Jr.
Sure. Thank you again. Yeah, one thing that I want to just sort of comment on again is how impressed I was with the school and all the students and all the teachers that really helped working on the Our People, Our Climate project that I presented at the opening of GRULAC Jr. The call that I gave everyone, the action item that I presented to you was to visualize and document the climate change that you see around you in your neighborhood. If you remember, I gave you examples of stories and students that I've worked with in the Canadian Arctic that are experiencing drastic and dramatic climate change in their backyard. And I was really impressed on my last day at Los Alcaparros to see how much progress the students have already made on documenting the climate change in the Paramos, documenting the climate change in Bogota, and specifically the issues of air and water. I was presented a draft video that one of the classes has been working on, and I was really impressed how the students caught the stories of local residents about air quality, about water quality, and about the changing environment that is affecting the city that is at such a high elevation here. So I think this was really, really powerful to see how this contrasts with the Arctic, because as you know, the ecosystem that you're in, the Paramos, is the second fastest changing in the world after the Arctic. So you have a really, really, really important voice to carry. So I hope that you will all continue with this work. And this sort of relates to the comment I made about women and earlier. I think the giving voice to those that currently have no voice in this conversation about climate change, because we all have a voice. You know, we have access to information, we have access to technology, but it's giving those voiceless people a voice through the power, for example, of photography. So I want to encourage you to keep doing this work and to keep interviewing and to keep telling these stories that are coming from your generation, because as I mentioned in my opening talk, it's your generation that really can carry that unfortunately has to carry that burden, but can also carry out the solutions for climate change. So I want to encourage you to keep working on this. And again, I'm extremely grateful for this week in Bogota. I have learned a lot from you. I have been really impressed with the students and the school. And I hope you will continue this project. Like I mentioned in my talk, we want to continue this project elsewhere in the world. And I mentioned Sri Lanka as one of the places where we will likely continue as a third location to start working on collecting these climate change visualization voices. So I commend you on your extremely important work that you're doing, and want to encourage you to continue creating these voices through photography and video.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alejandra, Nicolás, Dr. Pasupati, a last comment, un último comentario antes de presentar a Tatiana.
Any other comments before we introduce Tatiana? You all for this opportunity of being part of GRULAC. And
I was able to talk to you and you were able to listen to our ideas. I'm very proud of that. And I am beyond grateful that you guys gave us a platform to talk to you today.
Thank
Gracias,
you.
Sandra.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bueno, entonces les presento a Tatiana Rodríguez.
Okay, so let me introduce to you Tatiana Rodriguez, another very important student, highly committed to environmental matters, climate change, gender-related topics, and Tatiana will be making a very important invitation to all of us. Tatiana, welcome.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the global call for creative ideas. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see it?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so what is the global call for creative ideas? So practically, there are a lot of problems around the world that humanity as a whole is facing. So the idea is to, for people all around the world to propose a creative solution to all of these problems. So basically, as an individual, you would choose what you believe is the greatest problem for humanity, and create a creative idea, a creative solution to this problem. The idea is that you use your imagination and creativity to find new solutions to this problem that you consider is the greatest problem that humanity faces. And the idea is that they're out of the box solutions and different ideas. And practically, well, throughout the last months, there have been different talks about how to create creative solutions. There have been various talks that inspire and that help people along this process. So in this link, you can find all those talks, just in case you missed them, and they can help you with that process. This global call for creative ideas was open to everyone around the world, and it's open until May 31st. So you have some time if you haven't started, and I would really recommend you see all those talks because they can help you a lot in the process. And also every participant and votant can also participate in the study of creativity of Penn University. And this is where you can this is a link where you can find all the information, and you can also find it on the GRULAC page. But this is like the direct link where you can see everything more in detail. So I hope everyone can participate in this. It's a really great space to not only write what we want others to do, but also write what we can do and propose different things. It's a challenge, but I recommend you be able to try this and try to challenge yourself to come up with new ideas, because we're all worried about different problems and we all can be part of the solution.
Gracias, Tatiana, por esa invitación que ya está siendo atendida por
Thank you,
muchos.
Tatiana, for that invitation that has been accepted by many people around the world and many people that have been part of this creative Cerebro Creativo initiative, well, the Creative Brain Initiative. It's time to wrap up. I think it's been a complete cycle where we have the researcher, the teacher, in order to teach children and students to see what climate change is about and to show them about their potential, and for them to be impressed with their capability of presenting new solutions. So we take away enormous ideas as to how to put together our curriculums, how to approach the teaching of science and biology, our re-encounter with nature after a pandemic, after COVID-19. So thank you very much. We take away all the enthusiasm, or full of enthusiasm, in order to continue our work as educators and human beings of the 21st century, which is our job. We should do this. So thank you very much to all the participants and to all of the attendees today. Thank you for joining us in the Cerebro Creativo and GRULAC Jr. colloquium. Remember to visit us in www.alcaparras.edu.co to learn more about the global call for creative ideas and to look at the previous conferences. We welcome you to the next edition of our Creative Brain colloquium. Thank you for joining us.